everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Nina, and today we're talking all about some ADHD realizations and strategies that have genuinely changed my life. Now, if you have ADHD or are neurodivergent in any way, you have probably noticed that you commonly experience some pretty extreme mental exhaustion. This is something that I used to struggle with greatly and something that I found to be extremely frustrating because I didn't understand why I couldn't just push through certain tasks or why seemingly simple things could become so draining and overwhelming. And I know I am not alone. It took me years to fully understand this phenomenon and to learn how to avoid going through this and feeling this way. So today I wanted to not only explain and validate the reality of this exhaustion, but also share some very specific things that we can do to prevent it from happening based on some extremely interesting and eye-opening research and also from my own experience. So let's dive right in. Now, mental exhaustion can occur for many reasons, but for people with ADHD, it's often due to the fact that we have more difficulty controlling our impulses and attention, which means we have to exert more self-control than most people, even when carrying out just our daily activities, which can be mentally draining for us. In psychology, we call this ego depletion, which is simply the idea that willpower is a finite resource that can be depleted by engaging in self-control tasks. In other words, if you have to exert self-control in a situation, you will have less self-control available in the next situation. And by self-control, we're talking about the ability to control our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, to delay gratification, and to persevere in the face of obstacles. And because most of the world is designed for neurotypical people, we are constantly needing to use our willpower to resist the temptation to do things in a way that makes more sense to us, or that would make the task a lot less miserable. Because as we all know, when we are asked to do tasks that we perceive as being overwhelming, boring, or pointless, it can feel like actual torture for us. And when we have to use our willpower for extended periods of time like this, it can be incredibly mentally taxing and lead to extreme stress and, of course, mental exhaustion. But what you may not realize is that this results in our body releasing stress hormones such as cortisol, which can have a very direct and negative influence on our mood and our energy level. So in a nutshell, what you are feeling is a very, very real thing and is definitely not in your head. In fact, there is a famous psychological experiment using radishes and cookies that proved that willpower is a limited resource that can be depleted by this type of self-control. In the experiment, participants who were not in the control group were all put in a room that had plates of both cookies and radishes and placed in either a group that was allowed to freely eat all the cookies they wanted to, or in another group that were allowed to see and smell the cookies but were instructed to only eat the radishes. The participants were then asked by the researchers to perform a difficult cognitive task because they wanted to gauge how long each participant would persist at trying to complete it. Now, what's interesting is that the results of this study showed that the participants that had actually eaten the cookies persisted for significantly longer at the task than those who had only eaten the radishes. This suggests that exerting self-control to resist eating the cookies had depleted the willpower of the radish eaters, making it a lot more difficult for them to keep going with the task. So why is this important? Well, it proves that ego depletion is a real phenomenon, which, as we know, can greatly impact neurodivergent people. But the good news is that knowing this and understanding this can help us to preserve our willpower and to replenish it when we are put in these types of situations. And when we're feeling mentally exhausted, there are actually several things that we can do to help us feel a lot better. Number one, instead of trying harder, try doing something in a different way. Now, of course, this is not always possible because sometimes we are in an environment that requires us to perform a specific task in a specific way. Could be at work or at school or something like that. And oftentimes, unfortunately, this is the exact opposite of how our brain wants to approach the task. But when the only requirement is that the actual task gets accomplished, sometimes we just need to start thinking out of the box and figuring out a system that is actually going to work for us. It really doesn't matter how other people typically complete a task or how it's usually done, and I personally have found that conventional methodologies very rarely work for me, and you may find that that is the case for you as well. When we operate in the way that our brain wants to operate, we often don't have to exert any willpower at all. It comes very natural to us, and sometimes we can even shift into hyperfocus, which can be extremely beneficial. So oftentimes it really has nothing to do with trying to work harder or to exert more effort. And as a quick side note, learning how to make tasks more interesting and approaching them from new angles is a topic that I have discussed in detail in many different ADHD videos. So I will go ahead and link them down in the description box below in case you want to explore these ideas a little further. Number 2 is to take breaks. When you start to notice that you are becoming overwhelmed, take a few minutes and step away from the task at hand. Get up, move around, and do something that you enjoy, like reading a book or listening to some music. This helps with willpower because it allows our mind and our body to recharge, lowering the chance that we're going to experience mental exhaustion. It also helps us to just clear our head and to be able to come back to the task with fresh eyes, which oftentimes makes the task itself feel a lot less overwhelming. Number 3 is to take care of our mental and physical health needs. This means prioritizing getting enough sleep, eating healthy, exercising, spending time with friends and family, journaling, getting out in nature, meditating, and practicing relaxation techniques. All of these strategies help us to cope, reduce stress, improve mood, and improve our willpower. And so often we simply forget how impactful these very simple things can be, what a difference they can make in our life. So if that is the case for you, as it often is for me, we have to make sure that we actually schedule them, put them on the calendar so that we know they are going to actually happen. Number 4 is to set realistic goals and to break down tasks into smaller steps. Do not try to do too much at once. Start by setting small, manageable goals that are a lot less daunting and a lot more manageable. This helps us to build confidence, to prioritize, and to stay focused and motivated, which in turn requires us to monitor our self-control a lot less. Also, breaking down the task helps us to identify the obstacles that are making the task feel miserable and impossible, and to develop strategies to overcome them that will require us to use a lot less willpower. Number 5 is to create a reward system. As you complete each smaller task, make sure you take time to celebrate your progress and do something that you actually enjoy. Take yourself out to eat or meet up with friends and family, or do something that is completely out of your regular routine that fills your need for novelty, especially if you've been working for a long period of time on something that you do not find stimulating or interesting. We have to remember that people with ADHD have a brain that is actually wired for novelty, and because of that often have an actual need to seek out new and exciting experiences. So I have found that providing these opportunities for ourselves in safe and healthy ways, of course, can oftentimes be the ultimate reward for doing something challenging and can absolutely help us to replenish our willpower. But really, so much of this comes down to truly knowing and understanding ourselves and paying attention to when we start to feel overwhelmed and mentally exhausted. We can also set up systems to implement before we get to this point to avoid experiencing this as much as possible. Honestly, I feel like just having this awareness has changed my life, and I found the cookies and the radishes experiment to be really validating, and it's a great reminder that we do need to be mindful of how much self-control we're needing to use, and that we need to replenish our willpower when it gets depleted, because otherwise we are going to continuously feel overwhelmed and burnt out. So I would love to hear if you end up finding these strategies as helpful as I have found them, so please leave your thoughts in the comments. But also, if you do continue to experience mental exhaustion even after implementing all of these strategies, please know that you can always seek out the support of a doctor or a mental health professional. As always, I truly hope you found today's video to be insightful. If you did, please like it, share it, and definitely become a subscriber if you are not one already. I would absolutely love it if you stayed connected. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I hope the rest of your day is extraordinary.